Maria Elena wiped her hands on her old jeans as she walked into the community center. Her heart was beating fast. She was 34 years old and had never taken a music lesson in her life. The hallway smelled like coffee and old books. Pictures of smiling children hung on the walls. She could hear piano music coming from one of the rooms. She found room 12 and stopped at the door. Through the small window, she saw other adults sitting on plastic chairs. Most of them looked younger than her. A woman with gray hair sat at an old piano in the front of the room. Maria took a deep breath and opened the door. "You must be Maria," said the woman at the piano. "I'm Mrs. Chen. Welcome to our beginner piano class." Maria nodded and found an empty chair in the back row. Her hands felt sweaty. She had dreamed about this day for months. After working 2 jobs for 15 years, she finally had enough money, saved to take one class just for herself. Her 3 children thought she was crazy. Her ex-husband had laughed when she told him, but here she was. Mrs. Chen was talking about hand positions and finger numbers. Maria tried to follow along. She had never seen a real piano up close before. The one in the room was old and brown. Some of the keys were yellow with age. But to Maria, it looked beautiful. "Music is like a language," Mrs. Chen was saying. "We start with simple words before we can make sentences." Maria thought about her own life with languages. She had learned English when she came to America from Mexico 20 years ago. It was hard at first. She made mistakes. People sometimes laughed at her accent. But she kept trying. Now she could speak both Spanish and English. Maybe music could be her third language. The class was 1 hour long. Mrs. Chen showed them how to sit at the piano bench. She taught them the names of the notes. Maria learned that the white keys had names like A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. Then the names started over again. It was like a pattern that went on forever. "For homework," Mrs. Chen said at the end of class, "I want everyone to find middle C on a piano. If you don't have a piano at home, you can practice on the one here before or after class." Maria's face turned red. She didn't have a piano at home. She could barely afford this one class. A piano cost thousands of dollars. Where would she put it in her tiny apartment? How would she practice? After the other students left, Maria walked up to Mrs. Chen. "I don't have a piano at home," she said quietly. Mrs. Chen smiled kindly. "That's okay, dear. Many of my students don't. The community center is open until 9 at night. You can practice here." Maria thanked her and left. On the bus ride home, she thought about what Mrs. Chen had said. Practice here until 9 at night. That meant after her dinner shift. At the restaurant, she would be tired, but she could do it. When Maria got home, her teenage daughter Rosa was doing homework at the kitchen table. Her 2 younger sons were watching TV. "How was your piano class, Mom?" Rosa asked without looking up from her books. "It was good," Maria said. "Hard, but good." Rosa finally looked at her mother. "Mom, you know you're never going to be a real piano player, right? You're too old to start now." Maria felt her heart sink a little. Rosa was smart. She was going to college next year. Maybe she was right. Maybe 34 was too old to learn something new. That night, after the children were asleep, Maria sat at her kitchen table. She took out a piece of paper and drew lines on it. She made little circles on the lines where the notes would go. She had seen Mrs. Chen do this in class. Then she drew a rectangle and made black and white keys inside it. It looked like a piano, keyboard made of paper. She put her fingers on the paper keys and tried to remember what Mrs. Chen had taught them. Middle C was supposed to be here. D was next to it. She pressed the paper keys, but of course they made no sound. Still, she could imagine the music in her head. The next day at work, Maria could not stop thinking about the piano. She worked at Tony's Diner downtown. She had been a waitress there for 8 years. The work was hard. She stood on her feet all day. Customers were sometimes rude, but it paid the bills. During her break, she sat in the back room and drew another paper keyboard. This time she made it bigger. She wrote the letter names under each key so she would not forget. Tony, her boss, walked by and saw her drawing. "What's that?" he asked. "It's a piano," Maria said. "I'm taking lessons." Tony laughed. "Maria, you're a good waitress. Stick to what you know." But Maria did not feel hurt by Tony's words. Something inside her felt different now. When she was a little girl in Mexico, her grandmother used to hum beautiful songs while she cooked. Maria would listen and try to hum along. Her grandmother always said, "Music lives in your heart, mija. Someday it will find its way out." Maybe that someday was now. After work, Maria took the bus back to the community center. It was 7 o'clock. The building was almost empty. She found room 12 and turned on the lights. The old piano sat there waiting for her. She sat on the bench and put her fingers on the keys. She found middle C, just like Mrs. Chen had shown her. She pressed it down. A clear, sweet sound filled the quiet room. Maria smiled. It was the first time she had ever made music on a real piano. She practiced for an hour. She played single notes, then tried to play 2 notes together. Sometimes it sounded good, sometimes it didn't, but every sound was magical to her. When she got home that night, Rosa was still awake, studying. "How was practice, Mom?" Rosa asked. This time she sounded more interested. "It was wonderful," Maria said. "The piano has such a beautiful voice." Rosa looked at her mother's face. She saw something there she had not seen in a long time. Her mother looked happy, really happy. "Maybe you could play something for us someday," Rosa said. Maria hugged her daughter. "Maybe I will." As Maria got ready for bed, she thought about the piano lesson that was coming next week. Mrs. Chen was going to teach them a simple song. She said it would be "Mary Had a Little Lamb." Maria had heard that song many times. It seemed easy enough. But something told her that when she sat down at that piano next week, something special was going to happen. She could feel it in her heart. Just like her grandmother had always said, the music was ready to find its way out. Maria's alarm clock went off at 5 in the morning. She'd been dreaming about piano music again. In her dreams, she could play beautiful songs that made people cry happy tears. But when she woke up, she remembered that she could barely play, 1 note at a time. She got dressed quietly so she would not wake up her children. Rosa had to get up for school in 2 hours. The boys could sleep longer. Maria made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with her paper piano. She had drawn 3 more keyboards during the week. Now her whole kitchen table was covered with them. Maria put her fingers on the paper keys and moved them like Mrs. Chen had taught her. She pretended to play scales. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Up and down, up and down. Her neighbors probably thought she was crazy, moving her fingers in the air over pieces of paper. At work that day, Maria's friend Carmen noticed something different about her. "You look happy," Carmen said. "What's going on?" Carmen had been working at Tony's diner for 12 years. She was like an older sister to Maria. She knew about the divorce, the money problems, the long nights when Maria cried because she was so tired and scared. "I'm taking piano lessons," Maria said as she filled salt shakers. Carmen's eyes got wide. "Piano lessons? Maria, honey, don't you have enough to worry about? Rosa needs money for college. The boys need new shoes. Why are you spending money on something you don't need?" Maria stopped filling the salt shaker. "Because I do need it," she said quietly. "I can't explain why, but I need it." Carmen shook her head. "Be careful, Maria. Don't let dreams make you forget about real life." But Carmen's words could not change how Maria felt. Every day, the need to play music got stronger. It was like being hungry or thirsty, but different. It was like her soul was hungry. During her lunch break, Maria walked to the music store 2 blocks away from the diner. She had never been inside before. The owner, Mr. Peterson, was an old man with kind eyes. The store was full of guitars, violins, and 3 beautiful pianos. "Can I help you?" Mr. Peterson asked. "I'm learning to play piano," Maria said. "I just wanted to see a real one up close." Mr. Peterson smiled. "Come on then. This one here is my favorite. He led her to a black piano that shined like a mirror. This is a baby grand. It's not as big as a concert grand, but it has a beautiful sound. Maria stared at the piano. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The keys were perfect white and black, not yellow and chipped like the one at the community center. "Can I touch it?" she asked. "Of course," Mr. Peterson said. Maria reached out and pressed one key very softly. The sound was like an angel singing. It was rich and full and seemed to fill up the whole store. "You have a gentle touch," Mr. Peterson said. "That's important for a piano player." Maria felt proud. No one had ever said she had a gift for anything before. "How much does a piano like this cost?" she asked. "Well, this one is $12,000, but I have smaller ones for less money. There's also rent-to-own programs. $12,000. Maria's heart sank. She made that much money in a whole year, and it all went to rent, food, and clothes for her children. She could never afford a real piano. "Thank you for letting me play it," she said sadly. "You come back any time," Mr. Peterson said. "A person who loves music is always welcome here." That night at the community center, Maria practiced harder than ever. She was learning to read simple music now. Mrs. Chen had given her a book with easy songs. "Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star," and "Happy Birthday," and "Mary Had a Little Lamb." But when Maria played these simple songs, something strange happened. Her hands wanted to do more than just play the basic notes. Her left hand wanted to add low notes that sounded good with the melody. Her right hand wanted to make the tune more interesting, with little decorations and changes. Mrs. Chen had told them to play exactly what was written in the book. "Don't add anything yet," she had said. "Learn the basics first." But Maria could not help herself. The music in her head was so much more beautiful than the simple songs in the book. It was like someone was telling her what notes to play, someone who knew music better than she did. After practice, Maria called her mother in Mexico. They talked every Sunday night. Maria's mother, Elena, was 70 years old and had worked as a cleaning lady her whole life. "How are the children?" Elena asked. "They're good, Mama. Rosa is doing well in school. The boys are healthy." "And how are you, Mika?" Maria told her mother about the piano lessons. She expected Elena to worry about the money, like everyone else. But Elena was quiet for a long moment. "You know," Elena said finally, "your great-grandmother played music." "What?" Maria had never heard this before. "My grandmother, your bisabuela Rosa, she played guitar and sang in church. People came from other towns to hear her play. She had a gift." Maria's heart started beating fast. Why did no one ever tell me this? She died when I was very young. And then life was so hard. We came to America, worked all the time. There was no time for music. But I remember her hands. They moved on the guitar strings like birds flying, so fast and beautiful. Maria felt tears in her eyes. Maybe the music in her head was not so strange after all. Maybe it came from Bisabuela Rosa, traveling through the years to find her. "Do you think it's foolish, Mama? Learning music at my age?" "No, mija. I think maybe it's time. Maybe the music has been waiting for you to be ready." When Maria hung up the phone, she felt different. She felt like she had permission to dream bigger dreams. She felt like maybe Carmen and Rosa and Tony were wrong. Maybe it was not too late. The next week, Mrs. Chen announced that they would have a small recital for their families. Each student would play one song. "Nothing fancy," Mrs. Chen said. "Just the songs we've been practicing. I want everyone to play Mary Had a Little Lamb. It's simple, but if you play it well, it will sound beautiful." Maria's stomach got nervous butterflies. Play in front of other people? She had never done that before. It's just for practice. Mrs. Chen continued. "Your families and friends, very informal. Next Friday at 7 o'clock. Maria thought about who she would invite. Rosa would probably come, but she might be embarrassed. The boys were too young to sit still for a piano recital. Maybe Carmen would come, or maybe she would play just for herself. But deep in her heart, Maria felt something bigger coming. She could not explain it. But she felt like this recital was going to be more important than Mrs. Chen realized. She felt like something was about to change in her life forever. That night she practiced "Mary Had a Little Lamb" on her paper piano. But in her head, she heard it differently. She heard it with extra notes, with harmonies, with feelings that made the simple children's song sound like something magical. Maria smiled as she moved her fingers over the paper keys. "Bisabuela Rosa," she thought, "if you're watching, help me play something beautiful." The morning of the recital, Maria woke up with her heart pounding. She had barely slept all night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw herself sitting at the piano in front of all those people. What if she forgot the notes? What if her hands shook so much she could not play? What if everyone laughed at her? Rosa was eating breakfast when Maria came into the kitchen. "Are you nervous about tonight, Mom?" she asked. Maria nodded. "Very nervous." "You'll do fine. It's just, Mary had a little lamb. How hard can it be?" But that was exactly what worried Maria. For weeks she had been hearing the song differently in her head. When she practiced on her paper piano at home, her fingers wanted to play notes that were not written in the music book. When she practiced at the community center, she had to force herself to play only the simple melody that Mrs. Chen had taught them. At work that day, Maria could not concentrate. She mixed up orders and spilled coffee on a customer's shirt. Tony pulled her aside. During lunch, "Maria, what's wrong with you today? Your head is in the clouds." "I have to play piano in front of people tonight," she said. "I'm scared." Tony's face softened a little. "Listen, Maria, I still think this piano thing is a waste of time. But you're a good person. If it makes you happy, then do it. Just don't let it take over your whole life." After work, Maria went home to get ready. She put on her best dress, a blue one she had bought for Rosa's graduation. She looked at herself in the mirror. She looked like a waitress playing dress-up, not like a real piano player. Rosa came into her room. "Mom, you look nice. Do I look like someone who can play piano?" Rosa smiled. "You look like my mom, and my mom can do anything." That made Maria feel a little better. The boys were going to stay with Mrs. Garcia next door. Rosa would come to the recital by herself. They arrived at the community center at 6:30. Other families were already there, setting up chairs and talking quietly. Maria saw her classmates warming up at the piano. They all looked nervous too. Mrs. Chen called everyone together. "Remember, this is just for fun. Don't worry about making mistakes. Even professional musicians make mistakes sometimes." But Maria was not worried about small mistakes. She was worried about something much bigger. She was worried that when she sat down at the piano, the music in her head would take over. She was worried that she would not be able to play the simple version anymore. The recital began. One by one, Maria's classmates played their songs. Some played well, some made mistakes and started over. Everyone clapped politely. The audience was small, maybe 20 people total, mostly family members who smiled encouragingly. Maria was scheduled to play last. As she watched the other students, her nervousness grew stronger, but also something else grew stronger. The music in her head got louder. She could hear "Mary Had a Little Lamb" the way she really wanted to play it, with extra notes in the whoa left hand, with little decorations in the melody, with feelings that made it sad and happy at the same time. "Maria Elena Gonzalez," Mrs. Chen called. Maria's legs felt shaky as she walked to the piano. She sat on the bench and adjusted her position the way Mrs. Chen had taught her. She put her hands over the keys and looked down at the black and white pattern. For a moment, everything was quiet. She found middle C with her right thumb. That was where "Mary Had a Little Lamb" was supposed to start. E, D, C, D, E, E, E. Those were the notes written in her music book, simple and easy. But when Maria pressed that first key, something unexpected happened. The note sounded different than it ever had before. Richer, fuller, more alive. And suddenly, her left hand moved to the bass keys without her even thinking about it. Instead of just playing E with her right hand, she played a chord, E and G and B all at the same time. The sound filled the room in a way that surprised everyone, including Maria herself. She continued with the melody, but now both hands were working together. Her right hand played the familiar tune of Mary Had a Little Lamb, but her left hand was playing notes that turned the simple children's song into something completely different. Something beautiful and sad and joyful all mixed together. The audience, which had been shifting in their chairs and whispering quietly during the other performances, became perfectly still. Mrs. Chen, who had been standing at the side of the room, moved closer to the piano with a look of confusion and amazement on her face. Maria was not thinking about what she was playing anymore. Her hands seemed to know what to do without her brain telling them. The melody soared higher than it was written, then dropped down low like a whisper. She added notes between the main notes, little decorations that made the song sparkle. Rosa sat in the audience with her mouth open. This was not the Mary Had a Little Lamb she knew. This was not the simple song her mother had been practicing on paper keyboards at the kitchen table. This was something else entirely, something that made her want to cry and laugh at the same time. The song was supposed to last 30 seconds, but Maria kept playing. The simple melody became the foundation for something much bigger. She repeated the tune, but each time it was different. Sometimes it sounded like a lullaby. Sometimes it sounded like a celebration. Sometimes it sounded like a prayer. Her fingers moved across the keys with confidence she did not know she had. She played high notes that sounded like birds singing. She played low notes that sounded like thunder rolling in the distance. And through it all, the melody of Mary Had a Little Lamb wove in and out like a golden thread. The room was so quiet that Maria could hear her own heartbeat. Or maybe that was the rhythm of the music. She could not tell where she ended, and the piano began. They were one thing now, making one beautiful sound together. In the audience, people had stopped breathing normally. Some had tears in their eyes. Others sat forward in their chairs as if they were afraid to miss a single note. An older man in the back row had pulled out his phone and was recording, though he was not even sure why. Mrs. Chen stood frozen by the piano. In 30 years of teaching, she had never heard anything like this. This was not beginner piano playing. This was not even intermediate piano playing. This was something that most people spent decades learning to do, and many never achieved at all, but Maria was lost in the music now. She had forgotten about the audience, forgotten about her nervousness, forgotten about everything except the sounds coming from the piano. Her great-grandmother's spirit seemed to be guiding her hands. The music that had been locked inside her heart for 34 years was finally free. She played for almost 10 minutes, though it felt like both forever and no time at all. The simple children's song had become a complete musical story, with a beginning, middle, and end. When she finally played the last chord and lifted her hands from the keys, the silence in the room was deafening. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. No one knew what had just happened, only that it had been extraordinary. Then Rosa started clapping, slowly at first, then faster. Others joined in, and soon the whole room was applauding. But it was not the polite clapping they had given the other students. This was different. This was the kind of applause people give when they have witnessed something magical. Maria looked up from the piano keys and saw all the faces staring at her. Some people were crying. Others were shaking their heads in disbelief. Mrs. Chen walked over and put a gentle hand on Maria's shoulder. "My dear," she whispered, "where did that come from?" Maria stared at Mrs. Chen, her hands still trembling from what had just happened. "I don't know," she whispered back. "I was just trying to play Mary Had a Little Lamb like you taught us." The applause continued, but Maria barely heard it. She felt like she was in a dream. Her body was shaking, not from nervousness now, but from something much deeper. It was like electricity had run through her fingers and into the piano keys. "Mom!" Rosa appeared beside the piano bench, her eyes wide, with excitement and confusion. "Mom, what was that? I've never heard you play anything like that before." Maria stood up slowly, her legs still unsteady. "I've never played anything like that before," she said honestly. The audience was beginning to crowd around the piano. People wanted to talk to her, to ask questions, to understand what they had just witnessed. But Maria felt overwhelmed. She needed air. She needed space to think. "Excuse me," said a voice from the crowd. A young man with thick glasses pushed through the group. "My name is David Chen. I'm Mrs. Chen's nephew. I'm a music student at the university." He looked excited and confused at the same time. "I recorded your performance on my phone. That was incredible. How long have you been playing piano?" Maria looked at Mrs. Chen, then back at David. "This is only my 6th lesson," she said quietly. David's mouth fell open. 6 lessons? That's impossible. What you just played, the harmonies, the improvisation, the musical development, that takes years to learn, decades even. Other people in the crowd were nodding in agreement. Maria noticed that several people had their phones out and red recording lights were blinking. Her face turned red with embarrassment. "Please," she said, "I just want to go home." But Mrs. Chen gently took her arm. "Maria, can we talk privately for a moment?" She led Maria to a quiet corner of the room while Rosa handled the crowd of curious people. "Maria," Mrs. Chen said softly, "what just happened was not normal. In a good way. A very good way. But I need you to understand something. What you played tonight, most of my advanced students can't play like that. Most professional piano players I know can't improvise like that." Maria felt scared. "Did I do something wrong? I tried to play it the way you taught us, but my hands just—" No, you didn't do anything wrong. You did something extraordinary. But Maria, I think you need to understand what this means." Mrs. Chen paused, choosing her words carefully. "I think you have a very special gift. A gift that most people never get to have." "But I'm just a waitress," Maria said. "I don't know anything about music. I can't even read music very well yet." "That's exactly what makes this so amazing," Mrs. Chen said. "Somehow you have natural musical abilities that can't be taught. You have what we call perfect pitch. You can hear exactly what notes should go together. You have natural rhythm, and you have something even rarer. You can create music in your head and make your hands play it instantly." Maria thought about her great-grandmother, the one her mother had told her about, the one who could play guitar like birds flying. Maybe this gift had been sleeping in Maria's family for generations, waiting for the right moment to wake up. "What should I do?" Maria asked. Mrs. Chen smiled. "First, you should keep taking lessons with me, but also, I think you need to meet someone. My friend Dr. Richardson teaches at the music university. He specializes in working with gifted musicians. I think he would be very interested in meeting you." Across the room, Rosa was surrounded by people asking her questions about her mother. Has she always been musical? Did she take lessons as a child? Where did she learn to play like that? Rosa answered honestly. She draws paper pianos on our kitchen table and practices on them. She's never had a real piano at home. She works 2 jobs to pay our bills. I thought she was crazy for taking these lessons. She paused, watching her mother talk with Mrs. Chen. I was wrong. David Chen was showing his phone to other people, replaying the recording of Maria's performance. Look at her hands, he said, pointing at the screen. Look how natural her movement is. She's not thinking about finger positions or technique. She's just playing, like she's having a conversation with the piano. Meanwhile, Maria was becoming more overwhelmed by the minute. People kept approaching her with compliments and questions. Someone mentioned posting the video on social media. Someone else talked about sending it to their friend who worked at a record company. I need to leave, Maria told Mrs. Chen. This is too much. Mrs. Chen understood. Of course, but Maria, please promise me something. Promise me you won't stop playing, and promise me you'll think about meeting Dr. Richardson. Maria nodded, though she was not sure she meant it. Right now, all she wanted was to go home and pretend this had never happened. This kind of attention was not something she had ever wanted or expected. Rosa helped her mother gather her purse and sweater. As they walked toward the door, people continued to stop them with compliments and questions. Maria smiled politely, but kept moving. In the car, Rosa was quiet for a long time. Finally, she spoke. Mom, I owe you an apology. For what? For telling you that you were too old to learn music, for making fun of your paper pianos, for not believing in you. Rosa's voice was thick with emotion. What you did tonight, Mom, that was magic. Maria felt tears coming to her eyes. I don't understand what happened, Rosa. I sat down to play a simple song and something else came out. Something I didn't know was inside me. Maybe it was always inside you, Rosa said. Maybe you just needed the right moment to let it out. When they got home, the boys were already asleep at Mrs. Garcia's apartment. The house was quiet. Maria sat at her kitchen table and looked at her paper pianos. They seemed silly now, after what had happened at the community center, but also they seemed precious. They were the beginning of everything. Her phone started ringing. It was her mother calling from Mexico. Mija, how did the piano recital go? Maria told her mother everything. About the crowd, about the applause, about Mrs. Chen's reaction, about feeling like someone else had taken control of her hands. Elena was quiet for a long moment. It was Bisabuela Rosa, she said finally. I can feel it. Her spirit was with you tonight. But Mama, people are saying, I'm gifted. They want me to meet university professors. They want to put videos of me on the internet. I don't know if I can handle all this attention. Listen to me, Mija, Elena said firmly. Sometimes God gives us gifts that we don't understand. Sometimes these gifts come at times when we don't expect them, but when they come, we have a responsibility to use them, not for fame or money, but to share beauty with the world. Maria thought about this as she got ready for bed. She looked at her hands in the bathroom mirror. They looked like the same, hands that had served coffee and washed dishes for 15 years. But tonight, these hands had created something beautiful, something that had made people cry and clap and feel wonder. Maybe her mother was right. Maybe this was bigger than just her own life. Maybe this gift came with responsibilities she had not thought about before. As she lay in bed that night, Maria could still hear the music from the recital playing in her head. But now, instead of Mary Had a Little Lamb, she was hearing new melodies, completely original songs that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside her soul. She realized that tonight had not been an ending. It had been a beginning, and that both excited and terrified her. Maria woke up the next morning to her phone buzzing constantly. She had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. Her stomach dropped. Something was wrong. The first message was from Rosa. Mom, you need to see this. People are sharing your video everywhere. Maria's hands shook as she opened the link Rosa had sent. There was her performance from last night, recorded on someone's phone. The video quality was not perfect, but the sound was clear. And below the video, there were hundreds of comments. This gave me chills. How is this possible? She's incredible. Someone needs to get this woman a record deal. I'm crying listening to this. The video had been viewed 12,000 times since last night. 12,000 people had watched Maria play piano in her blue dress at the community center. Maria felt dizzy. She sat down at her kitchen table and tried to breathe slowly. This was not what she had wanted. She just wanted to learn to play simple songs for herself and her children. She never wanted to be famous or have strangers watching her on the internet. Rosa came into the kitchen already dressed for school. Mom, are you okay? Rosa, what's happening? Why are so many people watching this video? Rosa sat down beside her mother. David Chen posted it last night after we left. He wrote about how amazing it was that someone with only 6 lessons could play like that. Then other people started sharing it, musicians, music teachers, regular people who love music. It's spreading really fast. Maria put her head in her hands. I don't want this, Rosa. I just want to go to work and take care of you kids and play piano for fun. But Mom, maybe this is good. Maybe this could change our lives. Before Maria could answer, her phone rang. It was Mrs. Chen. Maria, dear, I hope you're not upset about the video, Mrs. Chen said. David was so excited about what happened last night, he didn't mean to cause any trouble. I just don't understand why people care so much, Maria said. Because what you did is extremely rare, Maria. Most people study music their whole lives and never develop the natural ability you showed last night. People are amazed because they can hear the difference between someone who learned music and someone who just knows music. Mrs. Chen explained that Dr. Richardson had already called her 3 times that morning. He had seen the video and wanted to meet Maria as soon as possible. He thinks you might have what's called savant syndrome, Mrs. Chen said. That's when someone has extraordinary abilities in one area, even without formal training. It's very rare and very special. Maria did not want to be special, she wanted to be normal. But she agreed to meet Dr. Richardson the next day, mostly because Mrs. Chen had been so kind to her. At work that day, everything was different. Carmen had seen the video on Facebook and was waiting for Maria with wide eyes. "Maria, I can't believe this is you." Carmen showed her phone to Maria. "Look, my cousin shared this video and I thought, this piano player looks just like my friend Maria. Then I realized it is you." Other people at the restaurant had seen the video too. Customers were asking Tony if the woman in the piano video really worked there. Tony was confused and a little annoyed by all the attention. "Maria, what's going on?" he asked during the lunch rush. "People keep calling and asking about you. Some reporter wants to interview you. This is getting crazy." Maria felt like hiding in the storage room and never coming out. She had never liked being the center of attention. Even at family parties, she preferred to help in the kitchen rather than socialize with guests. During her break, she walked to Mr. Peterson's music store. She needed to be around pianos, around music, in a quiet place where she could think. "Well, if it isn't our internet celebrity," Mr. Peterson said, with a kind smile when she walked in. "You saw the video too?" "My granddaughter sent it to me this morning. She knows I love piano music." Mr. Peterson led her to the same baby grand piano she had touched a few weeks ago. She said, "Grandpa, you have to see this woman play. It's like magic." Maria sat on the piano bench and put her hands on the keys. Immediately she felt calmer. The piano felt like home now, like the one place where she truly belonged. "Can I ask you something?" Mr. Peterson said. "In the video, it looks like you're not even thinking about what you're playing. Like the music is just flowing through you. Is that how it feels?" Maria nodded. "That's exactly how it feels. Like the piano is telling me what to play and I'm just listening." "That's a very special gift," Mr. Peterson said. "I've been around music for 50 years, and I've only met a few people who could do what you do." That afternoon, Maria met Dr. Richardson at the University Music Building. He was a tall man with gray hair and gentle eyes. His office was filled with books about music and pictures of famous musicians. "Mrs. Gonzalez, thank you for coming. I've watched your video several times, and I have to say I'm absolutely fascinated." Dr. Richardson asked Maria to play something for him on his office piano. "Anything you want, whatever feels natural." Maria sat down and began to play. Without thinking, she started with "Mary Had a Little Lamb" again, but this time it evolved into something completely different. She played for about 15 minutes, letting the music take her wherever it wanted to go. When she finished, Dr. Richardson was quiet for a long moment. He made some notes on a piece of paper, then looked at her with amazement. "Mrs. Gonzalez, what you just did is extraordinary. You have perfect pitch, which means you can identify any musical note without a reference. You have natural harmonic intuition, which means you instinctively know which notes sound good together. And most remarkably, you have the ability to improvise complex musical structures without any formal training." "Is that normal?" Maria asked. Dr. Richardson smiled. "It's the opposite of normal. What you have is so rare that I've only read about it in medical journals. There might be fewer than 100 people in the world with natural musical abilities like yours." He explained that some people are born with brains that are specially wired for music. They can hear patterns and relationships between sounds that other people cannot perceive. Usually, these abilities show up in childhood, but sometimes they remain hidden until something triggers them later in life. "I think your first piano lesson triggered abilities that have been dormant in your brain your whole life," Dr. Richardson said. "It's like you've been carrying a master musician inside you and she just woke up." Maria thought about Bisabuela Rosa again. Maybe the master musician had been passed down through her family, waiting for the right moment to emerge. "What does "This mean for me?" she asked. "That depends on what you want it to mean. You could continue taking basic lessons and play for your own enjoyment. Or," Dr. Richardson paused, "you could let me help you develop this gift. You could learn to read music fluently, study composition, maybe even perform professionally." "I'm 34 years old," Maria said. "I have 3 children and 2 jobs. I can't become a professional musician." "Actually," Dr. Richardson said, "age might work in your favor. You have life experience and emotional depth that most young musicians don't have. And your natural abilities are so strong that you could probably learn in 2 years what takes most people 10 years to master." He offered to teach her privately, free of charge. "This would be a research opportunity for me too. I'd love to document your progress and learn more about how these exceptional musical brains work." Maria felt overwhelmed again. Everything was happening so fast. A week ago, she was just a waitress who dreamed of playing simple piano songs. Now she was being called a musical savant and offered free lessons at a university. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course, but Maria, please don't wait too long. Gifts like yours don't come along very often. It would be a tragedy to waste something so beautiful." That evening, Maria sat at her kitchen table with Rosa and the boys. She told them about her day, about Dr. Richardson's offer, about all the attention the video was getting. "So you're like famous now?" asked Miguel, her 12-year-old son. "I don't know what I am," Maria said honestly. "I think you should take the lessons," Rosa said. "Mom, this could be your chance to do something amazing with your life, something that makes you happy." "But what about work? What about taking care of you kids?" "We'll figure it out," Rosa said. "You've spent your whole life taking care of everyone else. Maybe it's time to take care of your dream." That night, Maria played her paper pianos for the last time. As she moved her fingers over the drawn keys, she could hear full orchestras in her head. She could hear melodies that had never been written, harmonies that could make people weep with joy. Maybe Rosa was right. Maybe it was time to stop being afraid and start believing that something miraculous had happened to her. Maybe it was time to trust the gift that had awakened inside her and see where it could take her. 2 days later, Maria called Dr. Richardson and agreed to start lessons. But first, she had to have some difficult conversations at work. "Tony, I need to change my schedule," she told her boss during the morning coffee rush. Tony looked up from the cash register with annoyance. "Maria, you've been acting strange ever since that piano thing. What do you mean, change your schedule?" "I want to cut back to 1 job instead of 2. Just work here in the mornings, not at the evening restaurant, too." Tony's face got red. "Are you crazy? You have 3 kids to feed. You need 2 jobs." Maria took a deep breath. "I've been offered free piano lessons at the university. Really good lessons with a famous teacher. But I can only do it if I have more time. Piano lessons don't pay the rent, Maria. Don't let this internet fame go to your head." But Maria had already made her decision. She gave notice at her evening job and arranged to work at the diner only from 6 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon. It meant less money, but it also meant she could take lessons 3 afternoons a week. Rosa got a part-time job at the grocery store to help with expenses. "Mom, I want to do this," she said when Maria protested. "I want to be part of your dream." Maria's first lesson with Dr. Richardson was intimidating. His classroom at the university was huge, with a beautiful grand piano in the center. Advanced music students practiced in rooms nearby, and Maria could hear complex classical pieces through the walls. "Don't be nervous," Dr. Richardson said. "We're going to start with what you already know and build from there." He had her play. Mary had a little lamb the way she had at the recital, but this time he stopped her frequently to ask questions. "Why did you choose to add that low F in the bass line?" "I don't know," Maria said honestly. "It sounded right. It is right. It's actually a very sophisticated harmonic choice. Most beginning students wouldn't even think of it." Dr. Richardson began teaching her the names for what she was already doing instinctively. The extra notes she added were called harmonies. The way she changed the melody was called improvisation. The feeling she put into the music was called interpretation. You're doing all of these things naturally, he explained. Now we're just going to give you the vocabulary to understand what you're doing, and the technical skills to do it even better. He also started teaching her to read music more fluently. Maria had been struggling with basic note reading in Mrs. Chen's class, but with Dr. Richardson's help, she began to improve quickly. Your brain processes musical information differently than most people, he explained. Once you learn to connect the symbols on the page with the sounds you already hear in your head, reading music will become much easier for you. After 3 weeks of lessons, something clicked. Maria was looking at a piece of sheet music for a Mozart sonata, something way beyond her supposed skill level, and suddenly she could see the patterns. She could see how the notes on the page related to the sounds she heard in her mind. She began to play the Mozart piece, even though Dr. Richardson had not assigned it to her. Her fingers found the notes with surprising accuracy. When she made mistakes, she could hear them immediately and correct them. Dr. Richardson sat quietly and listened, occasionally making notes on his notepad. When Maria finished the first page, she looked up at him nervously. How was that? I know I made some mistakes. Maria, that piece usually takes intermediate students months to learn. You just sight-read most of it correctly on your first try. Word about Maria's unusual abilities began to spread around the music department. Other professors started dropping by Dr. Richardson's office during her lesson times. Graduate students would find excuses to walk past the classroom when they heard her playing. One day, Dr. Richardson introduced her to Dr. Sarah Williams, who taught piano performance. I've been hearing amazing things about you, Dr. Williams said. James tells me you have some extraordinary natural abilities. Dr. Williams had Maria play a few pieces, then sat at a second piano and began to play along. Let's try some improvisation together, she said. I'll start a melody, and you respond to it. What happened next was like a musical conversation. Dr. Williams would play a phrase and Maria would answer with a complementary phrase. Back and forth they went, creating a piece of music that had never existed before and would never exist, again in exactly the same way. This is incredible, Dr. Williams said when they finished. Maria, you're having a musical conversation with me at a level that most of my graduate students can't achieve. Word about Maria continued to spread beyond the university. The original video of her recital had now been viewed over 2 million times. Music blogs were writing articles about her. Someone had created a social media page called The Waitress Who Plays Like an Angel. Maria tried to ignore the online attention and focus on her lessons, but it became harder when reporters started calling her at work and at home. A local television news station wanted to do a story about her. A classical music magazine requested an interview. Someone from a record company left 3 voicemails asking if she was interested in making an album. This is too much, Maria told Dr. Richardson one day after a particularly difficult lesson. She had been trying to learn a Chopin piece, and the technical demands were frustrating her. Maybe everyone was wrong about me. Maybe I'm not as good as people think. Maria, you're experiencing something that every musician goes through. The gap between what you can hear in your head and what you can make your hands do. It's normal and it's temporary. Dr. Richardson explained that her musical understanding was developing faster than her technical skills. Your brain knows what it wants to do, but your fingers need time to catch up. This is actually a good thing. It means you're growing. But Maria was feeling overwhelmed by all the attention and pressure. People expected her to be perfect now. Every time she played, someone was watching, judging, comparing her to professional musicians who had been training for decades. One evening, she went to the community center to practice on the old piano, where everything had started. Mrs. Chen was there, preparing for the next beginner's class. How are the university lessons going? Mrs. Chen asked. They're hard, Maria said honestly. Dr. Richardson is wonderful, but sometimes I feel like I'm drowning. Everyone expects so much from me now. Mrs. Chen sat beside her on the piano bench. Maria, do you remember why you started taking piano lessons in the first place? Maria thought about it. Because I heard music in my head and wanted to learn to play it. And can you do that now? Yes. Better than ever. Then you've already succeeded. Everything else, the fame, the pressure, the expectations, that's not about music. That's about other people's ideas of what success should look like. Mrs. Chen suggested that Maria play something just for herself. Not for Dr. Richardson, not for the cameras, not for the internet, just for you. Maria put her hands on the familiar keys and began to play. She started with Mary Had a Little Lamb again, but this time it became a meditation on everything that had happened to her in the past 2 months. The melody carried her fears, her hopes, her confusion, and her joy. As she played, she remembered why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. It was not about being perfect or famous. It was about the feeling of connection, the way music could express things that words could not say. When she finished playing, she felt peaceful for the first time in weeks. "There she is," Mrs. Chen said softly. "There's the musician I met 2 months ago. Don't let the world make you forget who you are." That night, Maria made a decision. She would continue taking lessons with Dr. Richardson, but she would also set boundaries. She would not do interviews or TV appearances unless she wanted to. She would not let other people's expectations change her relationship with music. The gift that had awakened in her was too precious to be corrupted by fame or pressure. She would protect it and nurture it, but she would do it on her own terms. 6 months after her first piano lesson, Maria's life had changed in ways she never could have imagined. She was no longer the nervous beginner who practiced on paper keyboards. Her fingers moved across the piano keys with confidence and grace. She could read complex music, understand harmony, and improvise pieces that left her teachers speechless. But the biggest change was not in her musical abilities. It was in her belief in herself. "I have an idea," Dr. Richardson said during one of their lessons. "There's going to be a benefit concert next month to raise money for music education in public schools. Several faculty members are performing and some advanced students. I think you should perform too." Maria's stomach tightened with nervousness. "Dr. Richardson, I don't think I'm ready for a real concert. These people would be expecting professional level playing." "Maria, you're playing at a professional level. You just don't realize it yet." Dr. Richardson had been documenting Maria's progress for his research. In 6 months, she had achieved what normally took students 3 to 4 years to accomplish. Her natural abilities combined with intensive practice had accelerated her learning in unprecedented ways. "But what would I play?" Maria asked. "That's up to you. You could play a classical piece or—" Dr. Richardson paused. "You could compose something original." The idea of composing her own music excited and terrified Maria. She had been improvising for months now, creating melodies and harmonies that came from her heart, but writing down a complete piece, something that other people would perform and remember, felt like a huge responsibility. "I don't know how to compose," she said. "You compose every time you sit at the piano," Dr. Richardson replied. "You just haven't written it down yet." That weekend, Maria sat at the university piano and began to experiment. She thought about her journey from Mexico to America, from silence to song, from being afraid to being confident. She thought about her children, her struggles, her dreams, and her great-grandmother's spirit that seemed to guide her hands. Slowly, a melody began to emerge. It started soft and tentative, like a person taking their first steps in a new country. Then it grew stronger and more complex, with harmonies that represented the different people and experiences that had shaped her life. She worked on the piece for 3 weeks, playing it over and over, changing small details, adding new sections. She called it Camino de Esperanza, Path of Hope. Dr. Richardson listened to the completed piece with tears in his eyes. "Maria, this is beautiful, and it's completely original. No one has ever written exactly this music before." The benefit concert was held in the university's main concert hall, a beautiful space with perfect acoustics and seating for 500 people. Maria had never performed in a venue like this before. When she walked onto the stage for rehearsal, she felt overwhelmed by the size and grandeur of the space. But when she sat at the concert grand piano and began to play, something magical happened. The piano was the most beautiful instrument she had ever touched. Every note rang out clear and pure. The acoustics made her music sound even more beautiful than she had imagined. "This piano wants to sing," she told Dr. Richardson after rehearsal. "It's like it's been waiting for the right person to wake it up." The night of the concert, Maria's entire family came to watch. Rosa, Miguel, and 8-year-old Carlos sat in the front row, dressed in their best clothes. Elena had even flown up from Mexico for the occasion, her first time on an airplane. Carmen from the diner was there, along with Mrs. Chen, Mr. Peterson, from the music store, and dozens of other people who had supported Maria on her journey. But there were also strangers, music lovers from the community who had heard about the waitress-turned-pianist and wanted to witness her story for themselves. Backstage, Maria felt the familiar pre-performance nerves. But this time, they felt different. Instead of being afraid of making mistakes, she was excited to share her music with people she cared about. "You're going to be wonderful," Dr. Richardson said just before she went on stage. "How do you know?" Maria asked. "Because I've watched you become the musician you were always meant to be. Tonight, you're not performing for anyone else. You're sharing a piece of your soul." When Maria walked onto the stage, the audience applauded warmly. She sat at the piano bench and adjusted her position, the way she had learned in her very first lesson with Mrs. Chen. For a moment, she looked out at all the faces watching her, some familiar, some strange, all expectant. Then she put her hands on the keys and began to play Camino de Esperanza. The music told her story without words. It began with the simple melody of a young girl in Mexico, listening to her grandmother's songs. It grew more complex as it represented her journey to America, the struggles of starting over, the loneliness and fear of trying to build a new life. There was a section that sounded like working in the diner, rhythmic, busy, sometimes chaotic. Another section was soft and tender, representing the love she felt for her children and her dreams for their futures. As the piece developed, the melodies became stronger and more confident, representing her discovery of music and the awakening of her gift. The harmonies grew richer, showing how she had learned to trust her abilities and believe in herself. The final section was triumphant but also humble. It acknowledged how far she had come while remembering where she started. It was music filled with gratitude, hope, and the knowledge that anything was possible if you had the courage to follow your dreams. When Maria played the last note, the concert hall was completely silent. Then slowly the audience began to applaud. But this was not just polite concert applause. This was the sound of people who had been moved, touched, changed by what they had heard. Rosa was crying openly in the front row. Elena had her hands clasped to her heart, whispering what looked like a prayer of thanksgiving. Dr. Richardson stood at the side of the stage with a look of pride and amazement on his face. The applause continued for nearly 5 minutes. People stood up shouting, "Bravo!" Some wiped tears from their eyes. Others simply shook their heads in wonder. When Maria finally stood up from the piano bench, she felt different than she ever had before. She felt like she had discovered not just her musical abilities, but her true self. She was no longer the scared woman who had walked into Mrs. Chen's classroom 8 months ago. She was an artist, a composer, a musician who had something unique to offer the world. After the concert, people lined up to meet her. Music professors from other universities gave her their cards. A representative from a recording company asked if she would be interested in making an album. A concert promoter wanted to book her for performances in other cities. But the conversation that meant the most to Maria was with a young Latina girl, maybe 10 years old, who had come with her family. "I want to learn piano like you," the girl said shyly. "My mom says we can't afford lessons, but maybe someday." Maria knelt down to the girl's level. "What's your name?" "Isabella." "Isabella, I want to tell you something important. 8 months ago, I had never touched a real piano. I was older than your mom is now when I started. If I can do this, you can do it too. Don't let anyone tell you it's too late or too expensive or too hard. If you have music in your heart, find a way to let it out." Maria wrote down her phone number on a piece of paper. "Have your mom call me. We'll figure out a way for you to take lessons." That night, as Maria's family celebrated at a restaurant, Rosa raised her glass of soda in a toast. to Mom, who taught us that dreams don't have expiration dates. Maria looked around the table at her children, her mother, the friends who had become like family. She thought about Bisabuela Rosa and the musical gift that had traveled through generations to find her at exactly the right moment. She had started this journey thinking she just wanted to learn to play simple songs. Instead, she had discovered that she had been carrying a symphony inside her all along. All she needed was the courage to let it out. 1 year later, Maria stood backstage at the city's most prestigious concert hall, preparing for the premiere of her first full-length composition. The symphony hall was sold out, 200 seats filled with people who had come to hear the woman, who had started her musical journey in a community center classroom. 5 minutes, Ms. Gonzalez, the stage manager said. Maria took a deep breath and looked at her reflection in the mirror. She wore a beautiful black dress that Rosa had helped her pick out. Her hair was styled elegantly, and she looked confident and professional. But in her heart, she was still the same woman who had once practiced on paper keyboards at her kitchen table. The past year had been a whirlwind of opportunities and growth. After the benefit concert, offers had poured in from around the country. Recording companies wanted to sign her. Concert halls wanted to book her. Music schools wanted to hire her as a teacher. But Maria had been selective. She remembered Mrs. Chen's advice about staying true to herself and not letting the world change her relationship with music. She had accepted a part-time position at the university as an instructor in the adult music program. She loved teaching other people who had been told they were too old or too late to learn music. Her classes were always full, with students ranging from 25 to 75 years old. She had also started a scholarship program for children from low-income families, funded by the money she earned from a few carefully chosen performances. Isabella, the little girl who had approached her after the benefit concert, was one of her first scholarship recipients. But her biggest project had been composing Migration of Dreams, a 45-minute symphonic work that told the story of immigrants coming to America in search of better lives. The piece was dedicated to her parents, her grandmother, and all the people who had sacrificed so that their children could have opportunities they never had. You ready? Dr. Richardson appeared beside her. He would be conducting the university orchestra for tonight's performance. As ready as I'll ever be, Maria said. They had worked on the piece together for 8 months. It was ambitious, probably too ambitious for someone who had been composing for less than a year. But Maria's natural abilities and intuitive understanding of music had allowed her to create something truly special. The piece was written in 5 movements, each representing a different stage of the immigrant experience. The first movement, Leaving Home, was full of sadness and uncertainty. The second, The Journey, was turbulent and scary, with musical storms and calm moments of hope. The third movement, Arrival, was chaotic and overwhelming, representing the confusion of starting over in a new place. The fourth movement, Building a New Life, was the longest and most complex. It showed the daily struggles, the small victories, the gradual process of finding belonging in a place that had once felt foreign. And the final movement, Dreams Fulfilled, celebrated the moment when immigrant families realized they had achieved what they came looking for. Not just survival, but the chance for their children to thrive. As Maria walked onto the stage, the audience erupted in applause. She saw familiar faces throughout the hall, her children in the front row, her mother beside them, Mrs. Chen beaming with pride, Carmen from the diner, Mr. Peterson, and dozens of her students and fellow immigrants who had supported her journey. But she also saw faces she didn't recognize, music critics, professional musicians, people who had traveled from other cities just to hear this premiere. The pressure could have been overwhelming, but Maria felt calm. She was not performing for strangers or critics tonight. She was telling the story of her people, her family, her own heart. She sat at the beautiful Steinway grand piano and waited for Dr. Richardson to raise his baton. The orchestra, 75 professional musicians, sat ready to bring her musical vision to life. The first notes of Migration of Dreams filled the concert hall with a haunting melody that represented the sorrow of leaving everything familiar behind. Maria's piano entered softly, like a voice trying to be brave in the face of fear. As the piece progressed, Maria lost herself in the music, just as she had during that first recital at the community center. But now her technique matched her musical vision. Her fingers flew across the keys with precision and power, playing passages that would have seemed impossible a year ago. The second movement brought the full orchestra crashing in with the chaos and danger of crossing borders, leaving behind safety for the unknown. Maria's piano fought against the orchestral storm, representing the human spirit's refusal to give up in the face of hardship. During the third movement, Maria could see people in the audience wiping their eyes. This section of the piece captured the loneliness and confusion that every immigrant knew, the feeling of being caught between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. But as the piece moved into the fourth movement, something beautiful began to happen. The music started to show how struggle could become strength, how difference could become richness, how two cultures could blend into something new and beautiful. Maria played a solo section that represented her own moment of discovery, the night. She first sat at a piano and realized she could make music. It was tender and joyful and full of wonder, showing how dreams could survive even the hardest circumstances. The final movement was a celebration. The orchestra and piano worked together in perfect harmony, creating music that was both triumphant and grateful. It acknowledged the price of following dreams while celebrating the miracle of their fulfillment. When Maria played the final chord and Dr. Richardson brought down his baton, the silence in the hall lasted for nearly 10 seconds. It was as if the audience needed time to process what they had just experienced. Then the applause began, and it was unlike anything Maria had ever heard. People leaped to their feet, shouting and crying. The ovation went on for 12 minutes, with people calling out bravo and magnificent in multiple languages. Maria stood and bowed, tears streaming down her face. She gestured to the orchestra, acknowledging their beautiful playing. She blew a kiss to her family in the front row. She put her hand over her heart and looked up, knowing that somewhere, Bisabuela Rosa was smiling. After the concert, there was a reception where people lined up to congratulate Maria. Music critics called the piece a masterwork of contemporary classical music. Fellow composers praised her unique voice and emotional depth. University administrators talked about establishing a scholarship in her name. But the moment that meant the most came near the end of the evening. A woman approached Maria with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," the woman said in accented English. "I came from El Salvador 20 years ago. Tonight, for the first time, I heard my story in music. You made me feel seen." Similar conversations happened throughout the night. Immigrants from dozens of countries told Maria that her music had captured something they had never been able to express in words. She had given voice to experiences that had been invisible for too long. As the evening wound down, Maria found herself alone for a moment at the piano where she had performed. She sat down and played a few quiet notes. Not any particular song, just the sound of gratitude made into music. Rosa appeared beside her. "How does it feel, Mom, to have come this far?" Maria thought about the question. "It feels like I finally found the person I was always supposed to be. Like everything that happened before, the struggles, the fear, even the pain. It was all preparing me for this moment." "What's next?" Rosa asked. Maria smiled. "I don't know, but I'm not worried anymore. I've learned that when you're doing what you're meant to do, the next step always reveals itself." She looked out at the now empty concert hall where 200 people had just heard her story told in music. A year and a half ago, she had been afraid to play Mary Had a Little Lamb in front of 20 people. Tonight, she had premiered a symphony and received a standing ovation. But the most important thing was not the applause or the recognition. It was the knowledge that she had used her gift to touch other people's lives, to tell stories that needed telling, to prove that it's never too late to discover who you're meant to be. The next morning, Maria woke up early and drove to the community center. Mrs. Chen was setting up for a new session of beginner piano classes. The same old brown piano sat in the front of the room, its yellowed keys still beautiful in Maria's eyes. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Chen asked with surprise. I was wondering if you need a volunteer assistant teacher, Maria said. I think I'd like to help some new beginners get started on their musical journeys. Mrs. Chen smiled. I think that's a wonderful idea. Maria sat at the old piano and played Mary Had a Little Lamb, the simple version, the way Mrs. Chen had taught her in that first lesson. It sounded perfect exactly the way it was. Soon, new students would fill these plastic chairs. Some would be young, some old. Some would have natural talent, others would struggle. But all of them would have something in common with the woman who had once practiced on paper keyboards. They would have music in their hearts, waiting for the courage to let it out. Maria smiled as she played. She had learned that the most beautiful music was not always the most complex. Sometimes it was as simple as one person deciding to believe in their dreams, no matter how impossible they seemed.